Hey y'all, welcome back to the lab. In this video, we're going to be talking about Hetzner's price increases, diving into the details of what they actually entail and what it might mean for your business going forward. So Hetzner announced new price increases this week for US server configurations, increasing the cost of select configurations by 5 to 25% and reducing included bandwidth allocations by 95%. These new prices have upset many customers, as Hetzner has historically been one of the cheapest cloud hosting options. Now, in this post, we'll explore what the pricing changes are, how that compares to the rest of the industry, and what that may mean for your cloud architecture going forward. Details of Hetzner's pricing changes. So, on November 28th, Hetzner sent an email detailing pricing changes for US server configurations. These changes go into effect on December 1st for new instances and will be applied to existing instances on February 1st. I think there's also some details around if you try to rescale instances, they may also be under the new pricing configuration, so just be careful of that if you are trying to stay under the old pricing for as long as possible. Now, the pricing changes themselves involve increased prices for specific US server configurations and lowered included bandwidth. Note that the price for bandwidth overages remains the same, about $1.10. Really, it's just €1 per terabyte of overage, which, as we'll see, is actually pretty competitive compared to others for overage costs. Now, going into the price changes themselves, these are the affected US server configurations. The first is the CPX line. This is going to be the AMD shared vCPU cloud instances, and the CCX line, which is the AMD dedicated vCPU cloud instances. So these are the only ones that have pricing changes, at least that were announced this week. Now, for the CPX line, these prices are increasing by 10 to 25%. And of course, the included traffic is also decreasing. And so we see here that, each of these prices is about 10 to 25% larger, but in general remains in like the same general ballpark of like what the configuration would have cost. Otherwise, it's just a few bucks per month. But then the big one is this included traffic. Hetzner used to include 20 terabytes basically at a minimum for each of the instances that you subscribe to, but now it's drastically decreased, going all the way down to 1 terabyte in some instances. But as you can see, depending on the configuration, it does change how much is included, which in general is actually more normal with other cloud providers like them. Now, for the CCX configuration prices, which are the more dedicated ones, these prices increase by less, about 5 to 10%. You can see here that it's like a few bucks here and there per month. And then again, the biggest change really is the included traffic, going all the way down to 1 terabyte on the low end and 8 terabytes here at the high end. Now, these are just snapshots of the prices that were sent out in the email. You can always check out Cloud Compare for updated cloud pricing comparisons, and I have updated these configurations to reflect the new December prices. Okay, so how do Hetzner's prices compare to other clouds? Now, while these price changes are scary with 5 to 25% increases, when put in perspective, they remain very competitive with offerings from other providers. Hetzner has historically been a relatively cheap cloud host and remains so after these price increases. Now, in terms of compute, Hetzner remains one of the cheaper options for provisioning shared vCPU instances, coming in 5 times cheaper than comparable AWS offerings. So here's a screenshot of Cloud Compare where you can compare a bunch of different compute configurations. I see that this is very small, so we can just open it in another window here. And I've got them separated out by the configuration. So let's go over here to like 4 CPUs, which is like a reasonably large server that most side projects will be on and can pretty easily horizontally scale to more. And we can see that the CPX price here has been updated to reflect the new December price changes. And even with these increases, it's still, the 4th cheapest option for this configuration. And it's way, way cheaper than, some of the bigger players like DigitalOcean. It's 2 times cheaper, AWS 5 times cheaper, Google Cloud 7 times cheaper, and then Azure is 11 times cheaper, whatever it is. So yes, the prices did increase, but, overall still pretty competitive. In terms of bandwidth, we see the same thing. Hetzner still excels despite dropping free allocations by up to 95%. Hetzner's included 1 terabyte is relatively standard across most hosting options, and honestly, most host options don't even give you a terabyte of included bandwidth. And the $1 per terabyte overage is much cheaper than a lot of the other competitors. And so we can also click in to look at egress over here. And we can see that we have a few that are still kind of offering free-ish traffic, although whenever anyone says like it's unlimited and free, always take it with like an asterisk, because like we can't really trust that. Like obviously there's a limit somewhere, we just don't know where it is. Hetzner is here. They used to offer 20 terabytes, but now it's 1 to 20 terabytes depending on the plan. And then it's $1.11 based on the current US to euro conversion rate for overage. And this is much, much cheaper than other offerings. DigitalOcean is $10, so it's 10 times cheaper than DO. Google Cloud and Azure and AWS are all in like the $85 to $90 range. So this is like 85 to 90 times cheaper than these. And then of course you get these functional first ones that are really nice to use, but have like very, very high individual unit metric prices. And so again, yes, it sucks that Hetzner reduced the amounts of included bandwidth, but at the same time, it is still incredibly competitive versus its other competitors. Now, what does Hetzner's pricing changes mean for your business? So for most businesses and architectures, these pricing changes won't mean much. Hetzner still has very reasonable prices for compute and bandwidth compared to their competitors, so in most cases, the math remains the same. If you chose Hetzner because they have a good price to compare or to performance ratio, then that still remains the same. They still have one of the better price to performance ratios. Now, where it may change things is for customers that were heavily using and, likely exploiting, if this is a problem for you, the very high bandwidth allocations. Those customers will now need to start paying a bit more for their bandwidth usage and may consider moving to clouds with unlimited bandwidth usage. Just note that if you are one of these customers, it is likely that you will eventually be asked to pay from that new provider as well. You can't have free unlimited things because eventually there is a line and you cross it. And that's one of the reasons Hetzner says that they are changing these allocations, is that most people never went over a terabyte of data, but then some people were going way, way, way over the allocations. And so if you are relying on these, free, unlimited, unmetered, egress things, you probably eventually will need to pay for this, in which case you're still going to have to compare prices, and Hetzner is still very competitive for overages. So you might even stick with Hetzner long-term in that case as well. Next. So Hetzner's pricing changes upset a lot of people, and it always sucks when prices increase, but Hetzner remains a very competitive cloud hosting provider, so for most people, this will not change much. I'm personally hosting several apps on Hetzner boxes and have had a really good experience so far, so we'll probably just stick with them until I have a reason to go elsewhere. Now, for up-to-date comparisons of cloud offerings and prices, and to see all those charts that we kind of showed in this blog post, you can check out Cloud Compare, where I'm trying to keep all of these things updated, add new configurations when they come, just so it's easier to keep things in comparison, because none of these pricing changes really means much unless you look at what it is compared to the other offerings. Now, if you like this post, you might also like how this developer's side project wrapped up a $100,000 cloud bill on Netlify and 5 ways to avoid the same fate, why Zig is migrating from AWS to self-hosted, also hosting their stuff on Hetzner, and finally, hosting my Docker containers on a VPS with Coolify as a PaaS or platform as a service with GitHub auto deploys. A bit of a mouthful, but basically this is how I'm turning these cheaper servers from providers like Hetzner into a really good dev experience that you might only get at the more expensive ones like Google Cloud, Azure, AWS, Versal, and stuff like that. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.